Yeah, so the next part is going to be about schedules. So we've touched a little bit about schedules already. What I want to do is begin scheduling certain elements, right? So I can schedule anything inside the Revit project. And I think design options and phases work well with this as well, because then I get to really see, one, not just the visual reason on why I'm doing a design option, but two, also the quantifiable terms behind that design option in most cases. So let's go to our schedule. Let's make a new schedule and quantity. And let's do curtain walls, right? So I have curtain systems, curtain panels. Yeah, let's do curtain panels. So we'll do a panel schedule. I'm going to click OK. So within the curtain panel, right, so in here I see that curtain wall is my curtain panel. I'm able to add all of the other properties. So in this case I had solar heat coefficient gain, thermal resistance. All of those things are part of the specific curtain panel itself. It's light transmittance. It's not the same as the room schedule. It has a different set of criteria. There are some things that are an overlap. You have your mark, you have your manufacturer, you have your keynote. All those are standard to all families. For us, we're going to do an area of that. So how much curtain glass do we have? What is the count of those panels? I can put in cost. Anything that's capitalized, these are customized by SGA, so whether or not I'm doing operable vent singles, single shorts, so on and so forth. Doing family and family types is another big one. And I'm going to do type comments. Okay. And I'm going to click OK. So when that generates, right, so none of our panels have any type of comment in them. So like we learned in the room schedules, I can pump in the type comments from the schedule now that I've established that, and it's giving me a count of number of curtain panels. So that's pretty much that perimeter edging that I've added into the model. So the real power of schedules comes in the ability to start calculating formulas, right? So how much of something do I have versus how much of not something I have. I can do Boolean toggles with it. I can do calculated values with that. And then also filtering. So the first thing is to set up a calculated total with this. So right now I have a ton of families in here, or curtain panels. They're called system panel from system panel type. And it's a count of a single. So what I can do is within this panel schedule, if I go to the properties of it, again, all four of these buttons, embedded schedule only comes up in the rooms. I'm going to go to the fields. And then fields is going to bring up filter. So this filter corresponds with this filter. So any one of these buttons is going to bring me up to these items. Now filtering, right? Can I filter by area? My area equals 52 square feet, right? So if area equals 52, or it's going to give me all the values that Revit actually sees, right? I'm going to filter and only show those items which are 52 square feet in my schedule. And what that does is it gives me the ability to select and say, okay, I want to pull out all items that are 52 square feet, and I want you to show them in the model. And I can click on show, and it'll toggle through multiple views showing those items. So for this, 3D view works great, right? And it'll keep them highlighted for me. So those are all cases where my glass is 52 square feet. That is in highlight and model. So I select them through the rows, and then I say highlight in model.
It wants to show me in plan view as opposed to in the 3D view.
You need to cycle through. So there's,
I
so,
just keep saying show.
yep, it's going to open up all these views. That's the only drawback. is as it's cycling, it's going to show. So by default, it will pick only the open views that you have, but it's always going to cycle the plan first on and then on over. So if we were smart about it, I would go to this view and I would say close hidden views, and then I would come to my project browser, open up my panel schedule, and then when I select all of these and say highlight and model.
You just select them all before it'll highlight.
Yep, correct. You got to tell it what to do. Then because only my 3D view is open, after closing hidden windows, it immediately just goes to that open view.
So it's showing, pinning, showing pins.
Yep. And then if I go beyond and say, okay, I've gone through all my open views, it's going to say all open views that show highlighted elements are already shown. It's going to say now I'm going to search through all closed views. And so in the event that is, try and open the view you want to look at it first before saying okay, because now it's going to go in and begin opening every view. Okay. Now, so that's filtering. Now, I can also filter by type comment. So let's say one is type A, and then I'm going to do another one. So that's going to change all of them. So unfortunately, let's call 52 square feet type A. And then let's go ahead and in the properties of that schedule, go to my filter again. And instead of doing area equals, I'm going to say type comments equals or contains A, right? And area equals something else. So if I do and it equals 42 square feet. So I know all type comments of type A, it's going to toggle. But then also show me all the ones from type A that are 42 square feet. If I do that, because I've done one panel, that panel was the same type, so all panels now of that type are type A. And I'm only showing 42 square feet. So let's get some different panels in there. So I'm going to remember from the walls, I can tab over with 3D view, and let's just swap out maybe on this side. Let's get some different panels on. So these curtain walls that I've created, or maybe even one of the curtain walls here. So let's take one of these curtain walls that you have, and let's change that to not be interior storefront. Let's call it glass railing. And I'm going to delete mullions, right? So this is now SGA curtain wall glass railing. Okay? Now when I look at this and I go back to my schedule, I'm going to turn off my filters. So I'm going to come back to filter and I'm going to say none. And that'll trump all the ones below it. I'm going to click OK. And we should be able to scroll through. Now I have a different set of criteria. So then under the ones I just changed, I'm going to call those type B. Yep, you can just type it in.
How do you indicate how do you change these all at the same time?
Because it's a type, it's going to change all of them.
So after you filter something, then you apply the type, and then you...
Yeah, and it can be instance or it can be type. In this case, it was a type. So and Rhodia, you'll have to go back and watch the video. We spent a lot of yesterday talking about types and instances.
But I applied, okay, so I just applied type A to a 52 square foot filter, but now it's type A for everything.
What we did while you were kind of piecing together is in my 3D view, I changed this back wall to be SGA glass railing. So I had two different panels. Okay. Oops, why is that open? There we go. Right, so now I have a type B. So the ones that weren't, I'm toggling type B. So then I'll go back to my filter and say, I want to see only type comments contains B and area equals 44 square feet. I have none that equal 44 square feet. Right? So I can begin querying it that way. Or if I don't want to filter, I can also sort and group. So I still want to see all my items, but I just want to look at them differently. I want to split off the different types within my panel schedule. I would go to sorting and grouping, and then under sorting and grouping, I'm going to say that I'm going to sort by family and type, and then and we'll just do one for now, and then we'll come back to it. Click OK. So then that gives me all of type A. Where's my type B? And then all of type B. So it does type B first, then all of type A. So now if I want to split them off into two, the schedule will split itself. So I'll have one set and then another set. So if I go back to sorting and grouping, why it's checking every instance is because I have itemize every instance on. If I deselect itemize every instance and then click OK, it's going to give me each one. It's going to say all of my type B are all 54 square feet, and I have a count of 29 of those panels. And then I have another one that has a varying area, which is why I don't see any sort of value here, and that's because I have multiple values. And I have 148 of those panels of type A. Okay? If I want to begin calculating square footages and things like that, if I come back into edit, under my sorting and grouping, I want to edit by area as well. If I do area, and then I click OK, now what I get is how many panels of each type, right? And then how many of each specific area. So I have 3 panels that are 14 square feet that are type A. I have 36 panels, or 2 panels that are 36 square feet that are type A as well. 54 square feet, all 29 are. Well, now I need to split that off into calculated totals, right? I want to see, I don't want to have to go each one, right? So I would go back to my filter. So now I'm going to filter out, or I'm going to filter in. So in this case, I'm going to add a footer. So if I add a footer to my family and type, right, it's going to split off type B from type A for me. So I have 29 panels of type B that are all 54 square feet. I have 148 panels of a varying square footage. So that's how I look at the variance that I had prior. So now let's say I want to get a grand total of the square footage. Now I have here I have almost a total square footage. I could go in and say 29 times 54, get up my calculator. Well, Revit will calculate that for me as well. What I can do is come into sorting and grouping. If I do grand totals, you would think that grand totals does what you want. Unfortunately, grand totals only gives you the grand total of the number that you have. In order to calculate out each individual instance, so in this case I would want to see a number 29 and a calculated total for the number of total square footage, and then also in this one I would want to see a total number of panels, which is 48, which I do see, mixed with also a total square footage. So then what I need to do is under formatting, if I go to area, I can calculate totals with my area field. And then it's going to give me a calculated total of how much area of panel I have. But now that doesn't work for me because that changed the number I have. I still have to get my calculator out and divide that out. So then I would come back to my sorting and grouping, make sure area has a footer. That should give me my, nope. And this is where even I takes a little fudging with it. So let's try that. Nope. So there, you got to kind of play with it to get what you want out of it here. We don't, if I check itemize every instance, remember that's what happens. We don't want to do that. So we'll do a footer of count and totals, and not that. So we want to get back to that. Yeah. Yeah, this is where it gets tricky. So if I do area first, and then I do family and type, you'll see how it switches. So really I spend a lot of time just organizing data within the schedules. So sometimes you get what you want out of the schedule, sometimes you don't. In this case, we should be able to get it out though. So if I do a footer with that, I'm gonna do counting totals. Okay. And sorting and grouping, footer and footer, grand totals. Area is a calculated total. So it's still itemizing every instance for me. But in this case, so now I'm getting closer, right? So this one, I'm getting 3 at 42 square feet. That's my 14 square foot. Geez. Take off my footer. So it's going to calculate. If I have this as a footer, that's why that footer is coming across, right? So that's kind of where we're at. So I think, all right, there's always going to be some tallies where you're not going to get everything you want out of it. Really, it's about what I want out of the data. I can always duplicate off the schedule and combine schedules on a sheet. So yeah, that's that. If I want to look at what a conditional format is, so my area, I can set up conditions and say on my conditional, if area is greater than 42 square feet, or in this case we'll do if area is greater than 50, let's do 144 square feet, then do something. So I can color my fields. So I can begin setting up Boolean toggles and say I have a green light on those. None of them meet 144 square feet because these panels are being divided out. I would come back and say, okay, on that conditional format, show me ones that are greater than 50 square foot. So that'll tell me that all these panels of that calculated total are greater than that, and then I can come and divide those off. I could also set up so let's say in this case, right, I was kind of struggling to get my calculated total out. What I could do is recalculate that from those two existing parameters on my own by setting up a new custom parameter. So in this case, I would come back to fields, and then under fields, I'm going to add a calculated value. And if I add a calculated value, I'm going to call it panel area, and it's going to be a formula, and it's going to be a type of number, and my formula, if I open that up, is going to be area. Select a field to be added to the formula, area, and then I need to do that divided by count. So the field count cannot be used in formulas. When multiple elements appear on the same schedule, now formulas are evaluated independently for each element, and then the results are combined. Count is only meaningful for the row as a whole, not for individual elements. Okay, so that tells me there's a problem. Try integer. Nope. So yeah, that's an issue there. So having that count, so we would need to, that is a problem. Okay, well, all right. So let's take a different approach on the calculated value. On the calculated value, let's say that I need to have a percentage of glazing. Of my percentage on glazing, which one is meeting a certain condition or not. So I would take my calculated value as a percentage of my area, so ratio, we'll call it. What is my percentage of area by my grand total, right? We'll click OK. And that'll give me how much of each one is meeting a certain criteria condition. So you can imagine if I did my entire building skin as a panelized system, some of it's concrete, some of it's open fenestration, some of it's glazing. This is going to give me those ratios that we need to have on our drawings and report back, right? Cool? And then I could also do the same conditional format. So let's say under formatting, I want to come in and do that ratio. So ratio is now an option for me. And I want to say I'm going to calculate my total to make sure I'm meeting my 100%. And I show that I did calculate it as 100% and say that test, if it is greater than 10%, then color it red. So I say, oops, I'm over on that, or I'm under on that. And then it's going to flag that as red. Okay. Some other things I can do on appearance-wise, because everybody says, well, you know, I want to have control over how my data looks. I can show title, right? If I don't show title, it's going to remove the title of the schedule on my schedule. So when I drag it on a sheet, it'll remove that. I can also then show headers and footers. If I turn off headers, I won't see what each panel is. Or what each column is worth. Grid lines, do I want to see my grid lines or do I not want to see my grid lines? I turn that off. Now we see them here because we need to see them, but when I drag that onto a sheet, I will not see those. Okay? All right, so that gives us, is there any questions on the panel schedules? I mean, you can spend getting the data to read out the way you want the data to read out. You really have to know what you're looking for. And honestly, I spend a lot of time, you know, just pushing and pulling, trying to get the data formatted the way I want. And that's because it is a database, right? And it's not like Access where I have explicit control over that database and that visual. And that's where I would say if you need that much of a granular approach to sorting that data is to attempt to export it to that database and run it through Access. In order to do that, you will need a 64-bit version of Microsoft Access, just because of the heavy calculation load, but it is possible. You know, future project management is going to be on that side of things. You don't see too many firms utilizing it, and it's more so because people haven't really seen the value in it yet. I see the value because I do use it quite often. The value is being able to take this stuff, right, that we're trying to do here in Revit and actually just getting it out and doing it there. Right, and really getting everything we want out of the data. But for the most part, again, 85% of the way there, right, for what you need. Okay. Now, one other thing is design options. Okay, so in this case, I don't have any design options. So when we're thinking about model iteration, right? So in this case, I had a type A and I had a type B. So what happens if I flip type A and type B? Right? And if I have a whole tower of type A and then I have a whole tower of type B, I want to see these values. So this is a quantitative set of information that I want to control, and I want to look at other design iterations. That's the real value of having a tool like this. So to set up a design option, I'll come into the project browser, and I'm going to go back to that 3D view that I had open. Right? Now, design options are kind of tricky, right? You can go down a rabbit hole and really hard to back out of it. So I'm going to kind of do a face value on it, and then we'll return to it if there are further questions. So I want to look and switch out. So I want this one to become type A, and then I want the other one to become type B, right, in my design option. So what I can do is I take this wall, because it still is categorized as wall. Well, first I need to set up design option criteria. So I'm going to go into manage, and I'm going to go to design options. So if I let my little graphic come up, it should give me, nope, it doesn't. So design option allows me a quick toggle between views. So I can set up the same view but look at two different design iterations, have the same camera setting, have the same visibility settings on it. The schedule itself will also schedule the same way. So I spent a lot of time setting up that schedule. Now I can set up two test cases to look at. One is going to be one is going to be the other. So I'll do design options, and I'm going to say I'm going to do a new option set. And on that option set, I'm going to rename it as panels. And then I'm going to do option 1. I'm going to rename option 1 to be type A, or iteration A, so we'll just call it A. And then I'm going to do another new option called B. And I'll rename that one as B. Okay? And you'll walk onto projects where there's multiple option sets coming on. So I'm looking at furniture, whether or not I'm doing a Saarinen chair or a Herman Miller chair or steel case set of furniture. I'm toggling between those. I'm looking at different paint finishes on an elevation. I'm looking at whether or not we're going to do a certain type of mullion versus the other type of mullion. The sky's really the limit. Anything that exists in Revit can be thrown into a design option. Basically, I need to set up containers first for that design option. So I'll close that off. Now, before we do anything with it, now that I've established this criteria, every view is going to have this design option in it now, which allows me to look at test case A or test case B in that view. Similar, in the schedule, I can do that as well. Right? So if I look at my schedule, I'm going to duplicate off my panel schedule. So I have 2-1, so I'm going to call this panel schedule panel A, and I'm going to call this panel schedule panel B. And then panel B, if I open that up, I'm going to go to my visibility graphics for panel B, which it should already be open anyway. Right here. So I got to actually click on it. VV doesn't work. I need to click into visibility graphics for this. And the only available visibility graphics now for the schedule is my design option. And I'm going to say I'm looking at design option B on panel schedule B. And then in panel schedule A, I'm looking at type design option panel A. I'm applying and I'm clicking OK. Now right now it's the same set of data because we have the same information in each one. And actually both design option sets have no data. It's reading the main model set. So we need to split off that data from the main model and start placing it into those containers. To do so, I come back to my 3D view, or any 2D view will work as well, and I'm going to take all of those walls on the exterior,
How do you quick select? Did you just do a filter, select everything and filter?
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. But these are still technically walls, so I'm actually just taking my time and selecting them. And then with those selected, so I've selected the walls themselves. I'm coming back to the Manage tab, Manage ribbon. And then there's a button called Add to Set under Design Options. So I'll give you a chance to select the curtain walls, and then we'll pick up there. Here.
All right.
So we'll come back into Resume. Now under the Manage ribbon, there should be, under the Design Options area, there's an Add to Set. So if I click on Add to Set, I should have option set A and option set B from the available option set that I created. If I had multiple option sets, I would be able to place this into multiple option sets as well. In this case, we only have those two. Now I want to place it in both because I need those walls to exist in both cases. I can't just add it to one and then try and toggle the other one. Just because I didn't add it to the other one, now it's not there at all. So I'm doing two test cases, both have to be there. But those are the only ones I'm placing in there. I don't want it to affect any of my floors or any other ones. Those exist in the main model. So I'm going to click OK. And then I still see them. So why do I still see them in this view? And that's because the next thing is toggling whether or not I'm editing the main model, whether or not I'm editing panel set A, or if I'm editing panel set B. Right? I can control that down here as well. So in our case, we want to edit iteration A, and we're going to change iterations types out. So I'm going to take this exterior wall, and I'm going to change this one to be my storefront. And then I'm going to change the chain here at the forefront to be the opposite.
What's it gonna be?
Completely opposite, the glass railing. It doesn't have to be all of them. You can get them close enough. Now I have multiple categories selected, unfortunately, so I need to go back and filter and say I only want those walls that I selected. Click apply, and then I'm going to change them to be the glass railing. So I have glass railing on the opposite, and it's going to say in this option delete mullions. Now this is important because now I've just deleted something, right? But it doesn't mean it deleted it for everything, and that's because we've added the geometry to both options. So now I can toggle this. Anytime I'm using this button up here, I'm toggling between editing. I'm not viewing, I'm editing. So whenever I'm done editing, I always want to go back to main model. Okay? Now in this view, so the same way the schedule is now going to be looking at 2 test cases, this particular view as well. So I'm going to close all hidden windows with my 3D view. And then I'm going to duplicate this 3D view twice, because I'm going to have my default and then I'm going to have my test cases. So in this one I'm going to rename it, I'm going to call it panel A. And then this one's going to be panel B. We got panel A here, and then panel B I'll zoom in as well. And then I'm going to window tile. So I'm going to close off those guys, close that one off, close that one off, close. So I have Sweetbird, start panel A, panel B. So I should only have panel A and panel B open right next to each other. So right now I have one set and then I have the other set. Both are looking at the main model, right? So whatever I just changed last, or whatever the primary one is, A was my primary, no matter if it's on main model or not, it's always going to show option A because it is designated as primary. If I said that I wanted B to be primary, it's going to flip both views to view the primary for those. Do you see that flip happen? And that's because it's primary. Now, if I want to split and look at both cases together, I'm going to right-click, or not right-click, but in each view, it's the visibility graphics. I'm going to go to the design option, and this one I'm going to look at panel A set. And then on this one, I'm going to look at panel B set. Oh, excuse me. This one's panel A. Panel A should match panel A name. Panel B should match panel B name. And then this one is panel B. BB. Panel B. There we go. 2 of the same views, same model, 2 test cases. The last part is now we can look in quantifiable terms changes that happen between the 2 sets. So I have panel A, panel B. So this is panel B goes with panel B. Panel A goes with panel A. If I zoom over, I have red highlighted on one side. I have a different set of criteria on the other. Right? So the time it would have taken to do both of those design options, just a simple change of swapping out what type those are, right? It took me 10 minutes to set up that condition. You would have had to go to Excel, you would have had to go to the calculator, you would have been calculating all these things out, double checking your math. Could be a half day's of work just to make that simple design change. So that's the power of design options coupled with visual, coupled with geometry, coupled with schedules and data. Okay? Any questions? I'm sure there are.
So when you go into plan right now, what's going to be the primary one?
B, because I made B primary. All right, so let's say, right, I have this now. Like, so the question is, well, okay, what is another trumping version of primary, right? So I'm happy with this, right? I'm happy with panel B's option, right? I made that primary, we're kind of leading towards that anyway, so I'm gonna make that the primary. Okay, we've made the decision now on the project that B is the decision, we're not going back to A, right? I may archive the model or whatever. I'm going to accept a design option. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that under design options, right? I'm going to, under this option set, I want to accept primary. If I accept primary, it's going to delete the option set because you're accepting that condition, and it's going to delete all corresponding views that you set up with it. It's going to ask you to delete those, and I'm going to say delete. So now panel B doesn't exist anymore.
The check marks, you can not delete them?
Exactly.
So desired.
Exactly. You got it. Okay? And for saving the model for you guys, I'm going to make sure that those are still there. So. Okay.
When you toggle between A and B, it switches